Welcome back to I Want to Talk About, the series where I take a topic, I sit on camera, and I blabber about it. And a lot of you guys were probably expecting that the next video is going to be my favorite games of 2006, but you guys know I like to talk about gaming live streams, and we finally had another one, so as you could tell from the title today, I want to talk about the PlayStation State of Play for May of 2024. It feels like it's been a long time since we've had a gaming showcase of any kind this year. It feels like a lot of the gaming news that I've been reading has been about layoffs and studio closures and everything other than exciting game releases. It's been a really slow year, but we are entering into that time of year where it's not E3 season, as I like to call it, now that E3 has been basically canceled. May it rest in peace. We're still entering that time of year where companies and publishers are going to start doing their showcases, and Sony decided to do one of their own. This is the first major gaming showcase of any kind of noteworthy gaming showcase since that Nintendo Direct partner showcase in February and the first PlayStation State of Play since January. I was nicer to the January State of Play than maybe some others were, and I even thought it was one of the better State of Plays in recent memory. And obviously with it being not E3 season, I figured something like this would come along at some point, though I was definitely worried about what it could show, given that Sony had announced earlier this year that they weren't going to be releasing any major franchise titles at any point in the 2024 fiscal year. For those that don't know, that's from April 2024 to March of 2025. So not to say that they were punting this year, but it didn't seem like there was going to be a lot that was going to be super crazy exciting. But they came through with this show, which was about 30 minutes long, not super long, especially compared to the February show. And they did note that it would have some PlayStation Studios titles, which had me thinking we'd at least get some interesting first-party stuff. Still, I didn't exactly set my expectations to the sky because it's a State of Play, it's not a PlayStation showcase, so I figured it would be a little smaller, but damn, they couldn't even crawl over the bar with this show. The bar was on the floor, and I wouldn't say that they brought a shovel, but they did kind of flop over it, I would say. Obviously, I have my script here with everything that they showed off, and don't be surprised if I blow through some of these things just because, again, it wasn't really that interesting of a show, unfortunately. You kind of see why I'm sitting back a little further from the camera right now, because, God, talking about this show. The first thing that they showed off was Concord. I believe I talked about this in my video on last year's PlayStation Showcase, but this is a first-party Sony title. It's the debut title from newly owned Sony studio, Firewalk Studios. They showed off a CGI trailer with some of the game's characters, as well as the first look at actual gameplay for it. And the CGI trailer was obviously really good. I mean, a lot of CGI trailers are good on their own lately, but I'd care more about a CGI trailer for this game if it wasn't a PvP shooter that expected me to care much for its characters that the game is clearly not going to care much for because there's not going to be much of a story or a campaign or anything like that. I mean, sure, the gameplay looks fast enough, I guess, but I just simply do not care for this kind of game. So there was very little that any of this was going to do for me unless they were like, yeah, by the way, there's a single-player campaign. Otherwise, I look at this thing and think, oh yeah, Sony's just putting out their own Overwatch, I guess. I know I've said that I want Sony to diversify its first-party approach, but I can't say that making more multiplayer games is going to be the thing that grabs me in particular. Though, as far as multiplayer, Sony has had some success in that regard this year with Helldivers 2, so maybe this will be another success for them. Sure, we can dream. Also, this went on for way too long. I mean, in a 30-minute show, this occupied about 10 minutes. It was about a third of the show. Did we really need a third of the show to be dedicated to something like this? I really don't think so. But there's a pre-launch beta coming in July with the full release coming August 23rd, so maybe that's something for you to look forward to. Then we went on to hear them talk about God of War Ragnarök getting a PC port, and look, I didn't play God of War Ragnarök because, at risk of destroying my reputation and giving an unpopular opinion that people will inevitably not really like, I didn't really enjoy God of War 2018. I'm already not the biggest, hugest God of War fan on the planet, but I didn't really like the change in gameplay that God of War 2018 had brought. So I mostly kind of ignored Ragnarök because I figured it was just going to be more of that. And also, I'm not a PC gamer, so nothing about them showing this off was going to make me go, ooh. Seeing them flash things like NVIDIA DLSS 3.7, AMD FSR 3.1, Intel XeSS 1.3, HIJK LMNOP Firepower 6.9, all that flew over my head. Most of that stuff was like, oh, I guess this is cool for somebody. With that said, I did actually list this as a highlight highlight in the descriptions because I do know that God of War Ragnarok is a very beloved game. A lot of people really enjoy it. So it is cool that more people are going to get to play it now that it's on PC. Again, it's not something I'm really that interested in, but I know there are a lot of people who are, and it's a pretty big deal, so cool, I'm happy for them. And it's coming September 19th, so hopefully that's something for you guys to look forward to in the back end of this year. After that, we got to take a look at Dynasty Warriors Origins. I honestly don't have a ton of experience with the Dynasty Warriors series. My only real experience with it is through the Hyrule Warriors spin-offs that they put out. Though I've generally heard that Dynasty Warriors is kind of an if you've played one, then you've played them all kind of franchise, so I guess there's that. The action did seem pretty cool though, and I mean, compared to everything else that was at the show, it does seem pretty decent. It looks like it could be a pretty fun game, and I know a lot of people are excited for it because this is a popular franchise, so that's good news. Again, I don't really play this series, but I can see this being one of those games I may end up playing if or when it eventually comes to PS Plus or something like that. Or if it comes out at a point when there's not really many other games to play, and I just go, sure, why not? But I won't know for sure because the game is not coming out till 2025, so I guess we'll have to wait and see when it does actually drop. Then we got to look at Infinity Nikki, a new game from a developer known as Infold Games. I guess it looks cute. I mean, playing as a cat seems like it's pretty fun, though in the trailer I was distracted by the music that just sounded like Discount Jump Up Superstar from Super Mario Odyssey. I mean, I guess an open world dress-up game seems kind of adorable, but if I ever do choose to play it, I hope I can play it solo. I think I've read that it is solo focused, but it has some community elements to it. The comparison they made was Death Stranding because, of course, this absolutely makes me think of this. Apparently, it's getting some kind of test in the third quarter of this year, so if you're interested in it, go take a look there. And Infold wasn't done because then they showed a game called Ballad of Antera. Which one was that again? Okay, in all seriousness, it was some kind of, I think, fantasy action RPG type game, and the action did look pretty decent in the trailer that I saw, but the fact that it's supposedly a single player game built in Unreal Engine 5 that's free to play, something about that just sounds a little too good to be true for me. I just feel like it's either going to be 2 hours long, have copious microtransactions, or it's going to have some ham-fisted online component. Again, your guess is as good as mine. The fact that it is free to play means that I'll probably try it out when it's ready, but I just feel like that's a little weird to think about, that a game such as this is going to end up being free to play. But I won't know for sure what it's going to be like right away because it's not coming until 2025, so there's plenty of time to wait for this one. Then we got into the short VR portion. Of course it was going to be short. Sony sometimes forgets they even have a VR headset out right now. But they started this extremely short VR section by talking about Skydance's Behemoth, which of course is titled that because it is from Skydance. Apparently it's also being developed by the team that made Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, so that's honestly kind of cool. I think I've heard good things about that game. This looks like it'd probably be pretty cool to experience in VR, but it's nothing too crazy to me. I mean, it seems like a pretty standard VR game, which could still be pretty fun. I mean, there's not enough VR2 games, so maybe that might make it worth trying out. Though the trailer made the game look hella laggy, so I don't think that really helped matters for me much. But it's coming out this fall, so maybe I'll end up looking into it if the back end of this year ends up being pretty slow, which it kind of looks like it will be. And then the last of the 2 VR games that they showed, because obviously Sony has a quota to fill, and that quota is we promise we have more than one VR game, was Alien Rogue Incursion. I do say that even as someone who doesn't really follow the Alien series, a VR Alien game sounds really awesome and frankly pretty terrifying. So when I had heard that this was going to be shown before the show, I was kind of interested. The only problem I have is that they barely showed anything, so it's hard to really get too excited about it. Really what they had was like the shortest of teases, and that's not really going to immediately sell me necessarily. Like, maybe I'll give the game a look, but the way it was advertised did extremely little for me, and it's supposed to be coming out this holiday season. You'd think they'd have maybe a little bit more to show other than about what felt like 20 seconds. Still seems like an interesting game, but I desperately need to see more. Then they announced the PS5 release of Marvel Rivals. It's a new game from NetEase, and I'll be honest, I know that there were quite a few people who seemed pretty excited about this, but this was honestly one of the worst parts of the show for me because it just looked to me like a pretty generic PvP game that so happens to have Marvel characters in it. I don't know, maybe I'm just slowly becoming a boomer toward multiplayer type games like this, and maybe it's actually quite fun, but it just didn't really look that interesting at all to me. The only real saving grace for me was that it was free to play. or is going to be free to play. Otherwise, I mean, there's a closed beta coming in July, so if you're interested, you'll be able to try it then. I can't say I'm super excited for it. Moving on from there, we got to see Where Winds Meet, a new game from developer Everstone. It's a cool looking samurai action game, though I honestly kind of feel like the samurai game is slowly becoming just a little bit overdone at this point. I mean, we have Nioh, we have Sekiro, we have Ghost of Tsushima, we have Wolong, we have Rise of the Ronin. Like, I know samurai are cool, but like, please, slow it down just a touch. But again, it does look like a good game. I know I've been sounding a little cynical this video. It does look like it could be fun. I just feel like I'm a little bit burnt out by samurai games at this point, especially because I totally forgot to mention that the next Assassin's Creed game is going to be a samurai game too, so there's certainly no shortage of samurai games at this point. Plus, this didn't have a release date, so who knows when we're going to see it next and when it's going to be ready to go, and who knows if by the time it comes out we'll have 10 more samurai games out. Still, it's kind of interesting. It looks pretty decent, and this is the developer's debut game, so I will be rooting for it to do well in that regard. After that, we got another look at the Until Dawn remake. I still don't understand why this game's getting a remake, and I love Until Dawn. I think it's a great game. I just still don't understand the rationale behind giving this game a remake. I don't understand the rationale behind a lot of PS4 games getting a remake at this point. Like all these rumors about Horizon Zero Dawn getting a remake, I'm just like, why? I love Horizon Zero Dawn, but why does it need a remake? Plus, I truly don't understand the marketing approach behind this supposed remake, or whatever it is. I know I called it a remaster before, but it seems like it's actually a remake. I'm starting to not be able to tell the difference at this point with both of those things. But I don't understand the rationale behind the marketing because they're really not doing or showing anything in the trailers for this remake that are making it look any different from the original game. Like, I'm sure graphically, somehow, this looks different from the original, but to me, I can barely tell the difference, and as far as anything new gameplay-wise, I mean, Until Dawn didn't really have a crap ton of gameplay to begin with, but they're not really showing anything that makes the gameplay look that much different. So again, I truly don't know whether I should actually be excited about this or not. I honestly don't feel like I am that excited for it. And they're also not really making it clear if there's going to maybe be like an upgrade path of some kind on PS5 if you can upgrade your original version to this remake, or if you're going to have to buy the game all over again. The only reason this seems cool to me is the fact that it's coming to PC, so more people will get to play it. Otherwise, it's coming out this fall, and I still feel like there's way too much that I need answered about it, which is weird because it's a remake. Then we gotta look at Path of Exile 2, a free-to-play action RPG from a top-down perspective. I know I've heard that the first one is a good game, but again, this kind of game really isn't for me, so what was here really did nothing for me. I'm sure it's going to be a good game, but again, it's far from being my kind of game, so Another one where I feel like I'm more thinking about people who are probably more interested in this and hoping that it looks good to them. It's apparently coming out late this year in early access, so that's worth something. If that's something that you're more interested in, have a go. Near the end of the show, things did pick up a little bit, because the next thing after that was the Silent Hill 2 remake, and I know there's a reputation that this game is getting for looking a little too combat-focused, and I agree based on the gameplay that it's probably just Resident Evil 2 remake with a Silent Hill coat of paint, but I can't lie, this was the first game that they showed that I actually looked at and went, I want to play that. Personally, I've really come around to this style of game, especially since playing the recent Resident Evil remakes as well as the Dead Space remake, so I don't mind having another game in this style. And admittedly, I think some of the worries that I'm hearing about it have kind of flown over my head, because I haven't really played a Silent Hill game outside of that free game that came out earlier this year, the Silent Hill The Short Message, which I didn't think was very good, unfortunately. And just based on what I've seen, I wouldn't mind making this my first proper Silent Hill game. And I know that after the show, they did have a Silent Hill live stream where they showed 13 minutes of gameplay of it. I didn't get to check the whole thing, the whole entire gameplay footage, but hopefully it looked even better there. And apparently the game's coming out October 8th, so honestly, given how little is coming out in the back half of this year, I might honestly want to play it just because we have so little to look forward to. After that, we saw Monster Hunter Wilds. This was the game that ended the Game Awards last year. It was kind of like the final announcement of the show. And as someone who has tried repeatedly to get into the Monster Hunter franchise but just can't, I feel like this game was honestly never really going to be for me, but it did kind of inject some life into the show for me, just because I know that this is a franchise that's near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. I've had some close friends that absolutely love Monster Hunter, so I know that they're probably really, really excited about this. And the game does look good, like, at least from an objective standpoint. Even as someone who's not really into the franchise, I do think this looks like a good game. Very much a good for the fans kind of game, but hey, it's something that I hope the fans are really looking forward to, and I did see a lot of excitement for it on Twitter, so hey, that's honestly good news. Again, if nothing else, it did kind of lift my spirits a little during the show. At least it gave me something to kind of go, oh, at, instead of feeling like I was going to fall asleep at. It's coming out sometime in 2025, and they did advertise that there are going to be some save data bonuses. If you have save data from Monster Hunter World or Monster Hunter World Iceborne, they'll give your cat some armor and weapons or something like that, which is cute. Thanks for that, I guess. But then to end the show, we actually got something that I am unequivocally excited about. Something that was leaked many times before the show, but I'm so glad it's real. Sony ended off the show by announcing Astro Bot. First and foremost, when this trailer started and I saw Astro Bot looking all destroyed, I was like, who broke my boy? But yeah, this leaked a ton prior to the show, and honestly, thank God we are getting a new Astro Bot game, because I played both of the previous Astro Bot games and they are awesome. Astro Bot Rescue Mission was a really, really fun VR game, and Astro's Playroom, which was pre-installed on every PS5. I genuinely think, despite being basically a 2-hour tech demo to show off the DualSense controller, it's honestly one of my favorite games of all time, and I have replayed it so many times at this point, and it never gets old. So I'm so happy we're actually getting a new Astro Bot game, and holy shit, this looks incredible. This really looks like a genuine growth for the series, and I really love all the new mechanics that they're adding to it as well, and a lot of the things that they're doing to kind of expand on the gameplay quite a bit. It feels like it's maintaining that accessibility and simplicity that the first few games had, but still adding a bunch of new stuff to make the gameplay feel even deeper than before. And the sheer amount of content that it's going to have is really great to read about. And it doesn't sound like it's going to be too overstuffed. It sounds like the content is going to be plentiful, but not like to the degree of padding, which is great. And of course, the PlayStation Easter eggs are awesome. Even as someone who doesn't really care for this series, seeing Astro Bot dressed as Parappa the Rapper was really awesome. And it sounded like on a blog post I was reading afterwards, the PlayStation blog post, that they said they're going to be doubling down on the PlayStation Easter eggs, and it sounds like they're going to be having some kind of actual main role in the story, which is incredible. And did I see in the trailer that you get to be a PS5, or at least like when you're fighting one of the bosses, you're gonna be like standing on top of like a flying PS5? Like, dude, what the fuck? That sounds incredible. Again, it's so awesome to see a full-fledged Astro Bot game that doesn't look like a mere tech demo, and even if this ends up being like a full-price $70 game, I would still gladly buy it, and I really hope it does incredibly well for Sony. It's coming out September 6th, and that's something that I'm really looking forward to playing in the back half of this year. And then for a very short bit, they kind of reminded people about the Days of Play that's going on, where there's a lot of sales and stuff on the store, and some other cool stuff coming to PS Plus. On a personal level, I saw that there's about 5 VR games coming to PS Plus, which is great, because even though I can't even name what the games are off the top of my head, I need some more VR stuff to play. And PS2 emulated games are coming to PS Plus, which is pretty awesome. I'm seeing that also Sly Cooper is coming to PS Plus, which is amazing. Please go play it. Sly Cooper is incredible. I know that I'm going to be replaying the game when it comes out. But otherwise, yeah, this was a pretty bad show. Even with the knowledge going into it that it wasn't going to be that exciting, it even fell below my already low expectations. I don't need to go on another VR2 game rant like I've done in previous videos, because Sony has made it clear that they barely care about the thing. Obviously, they're not publishing any of their own games for it, so I'll forget about that. But even like the stuff they showed on the third-party front and the indie front didn't seem that exciting to me. And as far as first-party stuff, Sony did show at least a few first-party games, but yeah, this year still feels super slow outside of Astro Bot. I don't know if I've mentioned it in a video before, but I know I've said it just in general. I'm honestly getting a little tired of Sony's less is more first-party approach, where despite the high quality, the quantity is super low. And a lot of the games have that similar over-the-shoulder, third-person, emotional, story-driven, super cinematic AAA blockbuster feel. And I'm not necessarily tired of them because they're bad, because they are good games. I mean, I just gave Spider-Man 2 my Game of the Year last year, which might even be a hot take in and of itself. But a part of me has been wishing for Sony to kind of diversify its approach a little bit more, which is really why I hope Astro Bot does so well, because despite the fact that the game looks so good, I'd like to see Sony make more games like that, like these kind of platformer games that have so much soul to them. And again, I see some steps in them diversifying their approach a bit, but I think a bit more quantity would do them wonders, and I think they might need to scale back their games to make that happen. I have been hearing a lot of talk that some of their recent AAA games haven't really done them well financially because expectations were way too high and the budgets were way too high. So I feel like they kind of need to scale back and get a little more quantity going by making some games that are a little smaller and not making everything some super cinematic AAA blockbuster. I mean, I like those games as much as the next guy, but a little diversity wouldn't kill anyone. I think I also heard that there was some kind of news that came out after the show that apparently Sony has more first-party games to show off at Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest. Why they would intentionally gimp their own show and not show off everything that they could is kind of beyond me. I don't know. I don't know if Jeff Keighley's really that much bigger of a platform for them, but hey, I guess we'll see. All in all, yeah, the show was rough, and while it got a bit better in the end, it was largely pretty bad to me. If I had to grade the show, I'd probably give it like a D+. I mean, again, for most of the show, it was cruising toward an F, but that last little bit, especially Astro, damn near carried the show. But otherwise, yeah, not really that good, even as a show that I didn't have high expectations for. But that's just my opinion on the State of Play. What did you guys think of it? Did you enjoy it way more than I did? Did you enjoy it about as much as I did, if not less? Were you just completely indifferent toward it? What games were you most excited about from the show? Was there games that you were hoping you'd see that you didn't? Whatever your thoughts and opinions are, leave them down in the comments below. Let's keep this civil and have some fun as we like to do. If you guys want to hit like and subscribe and support some of my other ventures that I have linked in the description, thank you. If not, it's no big deal. I totally understand. And yeah, once I turn this off, I'm going to continue with my favorite games series and talk about my favorite games of 2006. I just wanted to make a video about this because, you know, it's kind of a thing where I make videos on gaming showcases. With that said, I probably won't make a video on Summer Game Fest just because it's going to be a 2-hour Jeff Keighley commercial, and I'm probably going to forget most of the games almost as soon as they're announced, so But I know Xbox and Nintendo are having showcases in June, so I will talk about those when they happen. So stay tuned for that, but until then, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.